You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Sam Zia sex doc. He's a Sam Zia sex doc. He's a
Sam Zia sex doctor.
sex doc. He's a sex doc.
Sam on the tour with Mo. Sam Zia sex doctor.
He's a Sam Zia sex doc.
Yeah, the sex doctor Sam Zia is in right now. So listen up to KFI's Later with Mo Kelly. La 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 la, later with Mo. Sam Zia sex doctor. La la la, later with Mo.
KFI AM 640, we're live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app and also YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And Sam Zia, the sex doctor, is in. And let me just say right now, it's time to send the kids out of the room. It's time to send the kids out of the room. We're going to have an adult conversation about some adult things, and it's not necessarily age appropriate for folks who might be under the age of 18.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a serious conversation, an adult conversation about adult things. Sam Zia, where should we start on this occasion?
Well, I'm currently, as you know, I'm doing my dissertation right now. I'm doing it on adult film performers and mental health and workplace conditions and things like that. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about the impact of adult films porn on relationships. And there's this running idea that I've been hearing a lot that, you know, porn ruins relationships. And a lot of the articles I've been reading that try to support that are very concrete. It absolutely ruins relationships. And anytime you see any kind of a study that says absolutely this is the thing, it either has to be 100% absolutely the thing, or whatever that study isn't an actual study. It's just an article and someone's expressing an opinion. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to put it under the guise of actual research.
There has long been a stigma to not only pornography, but also performers within the industry.
Oh, yeah.
Now, from where you sit, is it something that is becoming less stigmatized, or we're moving in the other direction?
I feel like there was a period there for a while where it was becoming less stigmatized, including especially after the pandemic, when a lot of not even performers, cam models, people were looking for money and they needed to find some place to make any kind of money during the pandemic. Their jobs shut down or whatever. So they turned to OnlyFans and then get six figures really quick. It became more normalized there, where I feel like the industry itself is slowly becoming more stigmatized just based off of a lot of the political policy that might be surrounding the industry currently. There's legislation going through Texas where they're trying to outlaw, not necessarily outlaw it, but make it so you have to sign in with your driver's license on any adult site.
Yeah, that's probably going to kill the mood.
Yeah, that's going to make it a lot harder for people to want to go from point A to point B. Mm-hmm. But we had the conversation about it, not just about adult films and porn and the impact that it has on relationships, but the conversation turned to what has the higher relationship body count, porn or romantic comedy?
As far as being the issue which breaks up a couple?
Yeah, the things that make it so that relationships go in, because everybody, the first thing you hear as a negative about porn within relationships is that it sets unrealistic expectations about sex. And that is true to an extent, because sex and porn is catering to fantasy. It's not catering to reality. Mm-hmm. So, on average, guys that you find in adult films are way bigger than the average guy, and women aren't built like they are in the adult film industry as they are in real life. Real sex is a lot messier. Porn doesn't show the cleanup. It caters to fantasy, not sexual realities. And that's where, for a lot of people growing up, or younger people who have access to it on their phones endlessly, comprehensive sex education is something that's necessary to help people contextualize what they're seeing in adult films.
I asked you about whether it's being more or less stigmatized, because we have a generation now which has grown up with OnlyFans. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if they see that. And if you don't know, OnlyFans is a site where you can sign up and put out your own subscription. You can show your feet, you can show your ass, you can show a lot of things, but it is whatever you want to display. And people have become multimillionaires almost overnight.
Yeah.
But I don't know if people consider that porn.
Well, a lot of the people who who perform on webcams do not view themselves as members of the adult film industry. They view themselves as models. They're cam models. If you go to, say, the AVNs in Las Vegas, it's the adult film convention that they have where they have the big award show. There's booths specifically set up for the cam models, and the performers themselves have their own booths lined up. Whenever they're hanging out together, as far as I saw in the experience that I had there, cam models hung out in their own little area with each other because they were familiar with each other, and people who were porn stars, contract talent, were hanging out with each other. But they still, they're in the same vicinity with each other. They'll have drinks together and things like that. Now, it has changed for the adult film industry because there are more laws seemingly, on the horizon that are aimed to regulate the adult film industry. So we'll take a look at that as it evolves. But the idea of what has the higher body count, rom-coms or porn.
Yeah, let's go
I honestly think that rom-coms have a higher relationship body count because rom-coms set an unrealistic example and standards around relationships. Sex,
I thought about that.
Unrealistic standards around sex are way easier to undo than unrealistic standards about relationships.
You're saying Sleepless in Seattle has probably bodied some relationships?
I'd say yeah. Because let's look at, say, Sleepless in Seattle, for example. That was a movie where a woman heard a guy talking on the radio about his wife that he lost, and he's a good dad, and he's a great guy. And every woman was sending the radio station that he was on all the letters, like, oh my God, this is the most wonderful guy I've ever heard, and everything like that. And one woman, Meg Ryan, was like, I really like this guy. He's amazing. And then she finds him and goes out of her way to try to establish a relationship. And, it's way more. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. It's when you see all these steps, and there's a lot of those movies where it's guys who are like, if I only do enough, and if I only show up enough, and if I don't give up, I can win her over. In the real world, that's called stalking. I can't put it any other way. So if a girl tells you no, then in real life, you need to take the L, move on to someone who's a better fit than that. And it's part of a system that keeps people in bad relationships. Because there's so many rom-coms and so many drama films that are out there where people are like, I have to struggle and I have to endure because that's what love and relationships are about. They start to identify the idea of love with the feeling of struggle. Where if you're struggling that hard, then maybe that's not the right fit. Mm-hmm. So romantic comedies, it's way easier to undo the unrealistic expectations that are around sex that come from porn than it is to undo the unrealistic expectations that go around relationships from rom-coms.
All right, let me push back on that. I could say, well, but with porn, there's usually a disconnect because it's probably not both partners in the relationship who are viewing it or see, quote unquote, entertainment value in it, and that is part of the reason why it may unravel a relationship, as opposed to a rom-com where you're most likely, we've all seen Sleepless in Seattle. We may have even watched it with our spouse or our girlfriend, boyfriend, whomever.
Yeah. Well, and it leads to the next question that I had listed here is porn allowed in relationships? Is it cheating? And that it goes exactly to what you're saying. If it's one person who's hiding this and they're not communicating desires or needs sexually very well with each other, then one person within the couple may be using porn and maybe, in consuming it and doing whatever they want to do while consuming it and hiding whatever their behaviors are and the consumption of the porn from their partner. Now that's where that feeling of cheating and feeling of you're hiding something from me comes about. And really at the end of it, porn, I've seen relationships where porn is something that's off limits. They can't talk that, they've communicated the boundaries around it. If you have good communication skills with each other, if that's something that you feel is not part of the relationship, you guys communicate the boundaries around it, you're fine. The people who communicate boundaries really well around it are the couples that are more likely to engage and share watching it with each other as a form of inspiration. They draw, not inspiration, but they draw an idea of what they can engage with each other. And they're more willing to express their feelings, sexual desires, the things that they want to get into without the sense of shame that comes with it.
Sam, the sex doctor, is in, and he has more for us in just a moment. It's later with Mo Kelly, KFI AM 640 live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. We're live on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, just about everywhere. Actually, Carnation, when we're getting on TikTok?
Ooh.
Soon?
We're going to have, yes.
Okay, soon.
Real soon.
I know you're working on it. That's coming next.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI AM 640. It's Later with Mo Kelly. It's part 2 of Sex Doctor is in. Sam Zias. We talk about some more complicated aspects of relationships and also the intricacies of how we maneuver our way through them. Sam, we had started off talking about porn and relationships, and then it turned into a conversation about rom-coms.
Yeah.
And which says to me, what we may think something is, it may not actually be that. We may think of rom-coms as something that brings couples together, because most of the rom-coms are stories about man finds woman, woman finds man, they live happily ever after. And you were saying, no, if you look at the data, that actually does more harm for relationships as far as meeting unrealistic expectations, as opposed to porn.
Yeah. Well, because you have to look at it. Does porn ruin relationships? Depending on the relationship. If it's one where you have that hard boundary saying no porn and somebody keeps doing it secretly behind the other person's back, and that leads to feelings getting hurt, deception, and all of that stuff, that can lead to the end of the relationship. But usually that's where those feelings come from, is if one person is keeping secrets from somebody else. But when those sexual fantasies, a lot of times people will watch porn because they have a specific fantasy that they like, and they may not feel comfortable having a conversation about it with their partner, or there might be a specific thing that they'd like to try. They're going to adult film to get some kind of visual representation of that fantasy, and then they go and they hide that fantasy along with the porn that they just watched from their partner. If I'm that partner, I'm going to be pissed because you're not telling me what you're into. You're not giving me an idea of like, yeah, you know what? You're not even giving me a chance to see if this is something that I would be into as well. And I'll give you a great example of that. There was a story. I was at a club for adults a few years ago, and I tend to have fun conversations with people there. I've never really engaged in any kind of activity or anything at any of these clubs, but I love having conversations with people, especially like people who tend to go outside and if they're having cigarettes or like they're smoking a vape or whatever. I'll go outside and have conversations with people all the time because there's so many boundaries that get brought down when you're in a place where other people are actively engaging in a lot of sexual behavior. So while I was at one of these clubs, I was having a conversation with this couple that showed up together, and their thing was that they go to this club once a month and they'll find whoever else that they want to play with individually, not as a couple, do whatever they want, and at the end of the night, they reconvene and go home. These two people went 3 years married together, not communicating these needs or desires at all, but fantasizing about it and being too ashamed to actually say anything about it. These are two professionals. These are two like high, lawyers at law firms, and they had this desire individually, and they didn't communicate about it for years. And then finally, one person says, I'm kind of into this, and the other person's like, oh my God, so am I. And that made their relationship instantly tighter. They had a deeper level of communication without a sense of shame around stuff that is super duper secretive, that they were holding on to it for years out of a sense of fear that the other person would judge them negatively if they communicated.
Okay, but that fear is not necessarily unwarranted. I'm quite sure if I scroll my memory, I can think of friends and relationships and said, hey, guy friend of mine said, hey, I went to my wife and I told her that I want to do this or experiment with this, and received a very negative reaction.
Yep.
And in some cases that forever changes the dynamic of the relationship. I mean, I can understand why someone would be reticent to share everything. You may love the person, but you may not know whether you can go there with them.
Yeah. Well, and think about it. If you're opening yourself and making yourself up so vulnerable that you're communicating something sexually that is super duper secretive, and you get a lot of sexual arousal out of it, and then you get shot down, like you get rejected and shamed, then immediately that feeling of arousal it gets poisoned, it gets tainted. You have a hard time really reaching back for it because now it's like something you've got as sense of
taboo.
shame. Exactly. So a lot of people will hold on to those secrets for their entire lives, and they'll be with a partner for their entire lives, never communicating their actual desire.
All right, let me ask you this. Aren't there some things, let me put it another way. I happen to be of the opinion that some things are meant to stay as a fantasy, not to be acted out in reality.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things that should remain fantasy, but communicating fantasy. I mean, I've worked with couples where they were both interested in having a third partner into the mix, but they were so afraid of how each other would react that they didn't say anything about it for years. And then finally, that it came out in a couple session. Yeah, we were totally into this. And it's like, well, then you guys need to start discussing boundaries about what you guys are both willing to do and have become like part of that scene with that person in that moment. Because another issue that comes up with people who are trying to do that is that they don't communicate the boundaries ahead of time, and then that's where feelings get hurt. Because then, if somebody says, if somebody does something with a third person that wasn't communicated and boundaries weren't established around that, then a person can come out of that feeling more likely like, hey, I didn't think that was going to happen. I'm not happy about that. You got to communicate boundaries. The biggest and most important thing within couples, I guess the theme, the overarching theme on all of this is communicate those desires and needs with your partner. And it's not just the willingness to communicate, to say it. It's the willingness to hear it and not shame the other person. Communication is two-way road. You need to be able to actually listen and receive and not shame the other person who's allowing themselves to be vulnerable with something they may have been holding on to for decades.
How do you last question is how do you unravel some of this pent up shame, feelings of taboo, which may have permeated your growth as a child into an adult? It could be coming from religious ends. It could come from your parents. It could be both. It could be coming from all sorts of avenues. How do you unravel that after a certain point in your life?
A lot of therapy.
Okay. That's the answer then.
I mean, because really you have to process a lot of where those feelings come from. If you're doing it by yourself or with your friends, your chances are you're probably just going to get stuff that confirms whatever bias you have about yourself. If you feel like it's something that's immediately a shameful thing and you're not talking to somebody who's a neutral person that's just going to give you the reflection back at you without the judgment, then you're more likely, if you're just going to hold on to your idea by yourself, you're more likely to take that to the worst possible place where it's this is not a good thing. And it's you know what, maybe you need to communicate that with somebody who's a neutral party that can actually hold up an honest mirror with you and not a biased mirror. Not one where we're looking for our own faults. We're actually looking at it from a place where it's okay, let's get an understanding of where that feeling came from. Where stuff that happened with childhood, stuff that happened throughout the formative years. The little things like that led you to having that fantasy or having that kink. Whatever those things are, doing it from a place without shame. And it's hard for people to open up about it because they have been shamed about those feelings forever by society.
Sam, the sex doctor. You never disappoint.
Oh, well, thank you.
KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere. The iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI AM 640 is Later with Mo Kelly. We're live on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and the iHeartRadio app. And some weeks ago, we told you about how Gary Coleman, the late Gary Coleman, his ex-wife, Shannon Price, was upset at a documentary about Gary Coleman. And I talked about it. It was very good. It's a very good documentary. It's available on Peacock. And it details the life and times and the eventual death of Gary Coleman. And Shannon Price was prominently featured. In it, it had the 911 call and also Shannon Price's response to the 911 call that she made the night that Gary Coleman died, and she was in the house and had to do with some sort of fall. We never got all the specifics of the fall that Gary had, which basically resulted in some form of blunt force trauma. He was taken to the hospital and died some days later. And Shannon Price was, number one, the person who was responsible for making the decision for them to pull the plug on Gary Coleman. And also, there was a question of whether she had anything to do with his death for obvious reasons, having nothing to do with her supposed desire to get money from him. She was always accused of someone who was after his money. But there was always a question about whether she had anything to do with his death. She recently said that she was willing to take a lie detector test to prove that she was telling the truth regarding the last moments of Gary Coleman. She took the lie detector test. Turns out she failed it. Now, that's not definitive, but it doesn't help her case. And during the test administrator, Shannon Price was asked 3 questions by former FBI agent and test administrator George Olivo. Quote, did you ever strike Gary during your relationship? Did you ever intentionally decide to withhold help to Gary when he fell? And did you physically cause Gary to fall that day? Shannon Price answered no to all 3. But as it turns out, she failed the exam. And this is what Olivo had to say about where she was dishonest. Quote, there's 2 things I know for sure, Shannon. 1, you were not completely honest with me yesterday during this polygraph section. And 2, the other thing I know that's 100% certain is that there is more to this story that hasn't been told. And I don't know if it really drills down as far as where exactly she may have lied, but she was not able to pass the lie detector test as far as what she told about that day and what happened to Gary and his supposed fall. And Olivo went on to say, quote, the body never lies. The body always tells the truth. And your body, talking about Shannon Price, on that lie detector test, spoke loud and clear. There's something that caused you to fail this test. And Shannon Price moved the goalposts and said that she wasn't surprised by the results. I don't think that a lie detector test is definitive, but I do know it can provide some insight as to how truthful a person may be. You know, she may not have been the cause of Gary Coleman's death, but she might have not rendered aid as quickly as possible. She may, and I'm just spitballing here, she may have seen an opportunity because they were known for the types of arguments and the incidents of physical violence between them over the years. Not blaming either party, but they had a lot of physical altercations where I could see a scenario where Shannon Price realized, oh, his ass fell down the stairs. What a shame. 2001, 2002, 2003. Maybe I should start thinking about calling 911. We'll never know exactly how quickly one thing happened and then the next thing happened. But I personally, I believe that she had something to do with something. My opinion means absolutely nothing, but it just seems like this is a person who's just not honest about a bunch of things.
Mo, have you ever taken a polygraph?
No, I have not.
I have, and I failed it when I was telling the truth. So to say that this is an exact science is an inexact science is a severe understatement. These things measure reactions. It's not a total omniscient truth decider.
But Mark, you're a habitual liar, so I don't know if I can even believe you.
Well,
in this
only
moment.
to you. At the time, I was telling the truth about whether or not I had any foreign intelligence contacts. But it was
is this when you were being recruited for the CIA?
Long time ago. But it was.
No, true story. I was being serious.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, but it was such an outrageous question. Of course, you're going to have a reaction, and I don't know the answer in the Gary Coleman case that you're talking about. But it's also a question that conceivably could provoke a reaction whether or not you're telling the truth, because it's an emotionally charged subject.
I got the feeling the thing that we need to pay attention to was what she said after the results came in. She knew that she said, I'm not surprised. When asked like, what, you didn't pass the thing, she wasn't surprised that she didn't pass.
Yeah, that could mean anything, but it's not something I would say.
If I was telling the truth and I wasn't passing and I didn't pass a polygraph, I would be shocked. I would be like, hey, that's not right. I wouldn't be saying, oh, I'm not surprised.
Well, the thing is, and just speaking from my own experience, it's frustrating because if you know you're telling the truth and the needle is still moving up and down, you're like, okay, what am I supposed to do here? I can't really, you see in the movies where expert spies can control all their body's responses. You can't do that in real life.
I can.
Except for you.
I just want to set the record straight for the last time for all the naysayers and all the negativity out there that I did not kill Gary Coleman. I did not kill Gary Coleman. Period. I did not kill him.
Now, the profanity makes it real for me. That convinced me. When she threw in period and the F-bomb, yes, that she's telling the truth.
Foul language makes everything sound more authentic.
Now, she didn't say anything as far as like, I did not kill him. The fall may have killed him. I certainly did nothing to save him.
And that's that gray area where I think that her truth or the truth actually exists.
Gravity killed him.
That is so wrong. Let's see if we can pull this
The
up.
kid was a true star.
Different Strokes was a groundbreaking show. The audience loved Gary.
He had a spirit about him. He was always an entertainer.
If someone had told me my life would have been like this early enough where I could have got out, I would have got out.
The actor's parents and business advisors skimmed some of his earnings.
They took $770,000 and gave it to themselves.
I've taken that very deeply to heart.
He said, I just wanted to say goodbye. I cannot take this anymore. And we cried. His life was fraught with disappointments. From 1985 until his death, he lived with not a single kidney.
All he wanted was to find somebody who he could love.
Their relationship was tumultuous.
That's what I said.
Send someone quick. There's a lot of blood on the floor.
The death of Gary Coleman was suspicious.
I don't know what I can say without being sued.
People think that I did this because I'm the ex-wife. I'm the evil person, right?
Right.
His life is a cautionary tale.
A big man in this little kid's body.
The greatest child actor of all time.
There's certain performers that change our lives. He was one of them.
If you get a chance to see it, it's Gary on Peacock. It's really good. I've been telling you, I'm on this whole documentary kick. Gary on Peacock is pretty good, especially if you're a Gen Xer and you can remember firsthand the rise to fame and prominence of Gary Coleman. There are a lot of there are tent poles and signposts where he's like, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, I remember that. Or you didn't know that, but you remember the success, but not necessarily all the failures which happened along the way. Shannon Price, she probably has something to do with it, but it's not going to change anything.
I don't think we're ever going to really know the truth, and we can just speculate at this point. That's what we have these documentaries.
Statute of limitations it's not. Well, if it was murder, it wouldn't have expired. But I don't think there's any physical evidence which is connecting her to the death of Gary Coleman. KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. When we come back, we're going to check in with George Norrie, and we're also going to preview Tawala and Mark going to the movies.
Wait, what?
Aren't you guys going to the movies together?
Okay, never mind.
Was that a secret that you were going to hold hands or what?
No, I didn't know we were going to preview it, though. This is news to me.
No, you said you guys were going to the movies together.
All right.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Mark and Tawala are going to see Superman tonight. I saw it last night. I will reserve judgment until both Mark and Tawala have seen it. Mark, what is your level of anticipation? Because I know that this is arguably the most anticipated movie of the summer season, possibly of the year.
I'm excited to see it. They had me at Crypto. I'm excited, and I think James Gunn, who's the director and the boss of DC Universe movies, is a total nerd. He's one of us, and so I've been trying not to expose myself to anything that's going to spoil it, but overall, I'm hearing good things. Not uniformly, but overall.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to spoil it for you because I definitely want to have an unfiltered, untainted movie review from you at some point, or we'll get on the phone and talk or whatever, because I'm very curious.
Yeah, I've been just ruminating on it lately, and I think we need a Superman movie because Superman is good and kind and decent, and I think people are starved for that kind of thing, the same way they were when Ted Lasso came on Apple TV.
It's weird how Superman has been turned into this social pariah, political football to be bandied about, where it's now controversial to be quote unquote nice. That's the only way I can describe it.
I think if you have a problem with that, you're telling on yourself.
I do too. And I saw this. If you look, this is the only thing I want to say. You have to really look deep to find something political in this movie. You have to strain your eyes because it's not overt. And it's almost like if you want to read into it, yes, you will find it. If you're looking and determined to place your own views in the movie somewhere.
Sure, but comics and superheroes and their movies are like any other kind of art. They exist within and satirize and comment on the times in which they're made. It would be weird not to have that in it.
I agree with you, unfortunately, but people seem to think that there needs to be some sort of confirmation and affirmation in the media that they support. Like I'm not going to go to a movie unless it reflects my political values. That's crazy.
No, it's completely ignorant. And if you think Superman is just about super punching everything, stay home and do something else.
Or if you think Superman is only about the United States, you've missed the point.
Absolutely, 100%. Superman's your friend, no matter where you come from. And, I went on a thing. There was an old Superman ad against bigotry that I looked up. And if you just Google those words, you'll find it. But here's the spoiler. This is nothing new when it comes to Superman. He's always been against bad guys.
Yeah, they might be telling on themselves, Mark.
I'm afraid so. I think we got some supervillains in the real world these days.
Enjoy the movie. Let us know what you think.
Tawala and I will hold hands.
And share a popcorn.
Mm-hmm.
Don't put your hands in the popcorn at the same time.
Careful.
KFI and KOST HD2, Los Angeles, Orange County. More stimulating talk.